Okay, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. And this morning, I'm very pleased to have with me as my guest Neela Paykel, who's a former general counsel and now currently the technology general counsel in residence at Mayer Brown. Neela, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So, Neela, before we get to your current role at Mayer Brown, which I do want to talk about, but I'd like to talk a little bit about your background. You have been the general counsel of a few different companies, and maybe
Mhm.
just a little bit about your career path on how you kind of got to those positions.
Sure. For me, it's been a fairly traditional path in some ways. I went right from undergrad to law school, but since I was in law school in Washington, D.C., and there's so much opportunity there to do different things, so I actually went straight into a trade association. So I guess you could say that was my first in-house role, so to speak. And that's where I was exposed to and fell in love with healthcare law. And the trade association was the American Psychological Association. And I was helping our professional psychologists understand the new world of managed care and how to get reimbursement from insurance companies through HMOs and PPOs. So it was really interesting time, and it was when healthcare delivery and payment systems were changing throughout the country. And then I went into private practice for a few years and really dug in to the managed care, the third party payer reimbursement world. But still at that time, I was often doing um, focusing on emerging growth companies and new companies that were doing exciting things, and really no one had heard about some of the things they were trying to do.
Mm.
So that got me excited about and really into what we might now consider health tech or med tech, but at a much earlier point before those terms became a household kind of word. But when I left private practice was my first foray into in-house work, and really have loved the in-house role because I can be impactful with the company and really align my business needs and be collaborative. So I've really enjoyed that. So kind of went through a few different companies and then decided that I wanted to try something really new and took a general counsel role at a medical device company. That was the first time I had been the most senior lawyer in a company.
Mm.
And it was great learning because you have to know about all of it. You have to learn about all of it. If you don't know it, you have to be really strategic and mindful of budget. So it's a really great opportunity to do that. And then decided to do something completely different and took a role with Waymo,
Hmm.
a self-driving car company, autonomous vehicles, and did that for a while, and then went back into healthcare, where I was again general counsel, corporate secretary, and chief compliance officer.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah,
What was it about healthcare? Did you have a healthcare background as in college or healthcare family? Is that
no,
any reason that
no.
that attracted you?
No, not at all. And I had gone to law school thinking I was going to be an international lawyer,
Hmm.
specializing in international law, and got really wanted to work at the World Bank. That was my dream job,
Hmm.
and that just wasn't working out. Landed that role with the American Psychological Association, and what I realized was that working in healthcare was very personal. It affected everyone on a daily basis. And
Hmm.
it was something where I could actually help friends, family make a difference in other people's lives
Hmm.
and see it right away. It wasn't esoteric in a
Hmm.
lot of ways.
Hmm. What was the reason, or what was the maybe the itch that you had to try something like Waymo? That definitely seems far afield from healthcare,
Yeah.
unless. But what was the reasoning there?
It was just a great opportunity to join a marquee company, and who gets to do that and try something completely different and new. And it was a little bit later in my career, and who gets to do that later in their legal career. So it's such a fun opportunity to really just try my hand at something new. And I applaud Waymo for thinking outside the box
Hmm.
and bringing in someone outside of automotive or tech and bringing in someone like myself.
Mhm. So since you've been general counsel, I assume you've had experience in corporate, litigation, regulatory. I mean, do you consider yourself just a kind of a very well-rounded lawyer at this point?
Yes, I sure do. I sure do. Real estate, employment, IP, all of it.
Interesting. So after numerous interesting general counsel positions, you had some private practice and you worked in a trade association. Now you've taken on this interesting role at a law firm. And
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about maybe how that came about and what attracted you to that position.
Yeah, sure. So it came about because I was just, doing some research on different roles and things out there. I happened to see Mayor Brown post about this tech GC in residence program and noted that the partners who were involved with that were partners I was familiar with from my work at Waymo, in fact,
Mhm.
and reached out to them and said, "Hey, I think I'm a perfect candidate for this role."
Hmm.
And that's because it really was focusing on two main things, which is one, using my expertise and wisdom as a general counsel to help Mayor Brown work better with general counsel, right? And then second was my work in the technology industry in general.
Hmm.
And, whether it was through MedTech or through Waymo, I was still working in that space
Hmm.
that is considered tech, and Mayor Brown really wanted to um, increase its visibility, increase its touch points with the tech community, especially here in Silicon Valley, but around the world and around the country for sure. So I had that and was able to you know bring it home in terms of making it happen so I could be a part of the program. And I started in, I think like October timeframe or so in the
Hmm.
end,
Hmm.
and have been working on that for the last several weeks.
Yeah, so it's early days.
Mhm.
Is it like a 1 year kind of thing, or is it indefinite, or is there a certain time frame for it?
It's not a specific commitment time frame, but
Okay.
it's
Uh-huh.
about anticipated to be about 6 to 12 months. And,
Okay.
and the reason for that is because it takes a little bit of time to make an impact, to actually get things
Yeah,
off the ground and to,
totally.
to launch kind of things. So the previous person in the program was only there for a few months, but it was kind of designed to when you find a full-time general counsel role, it's okay. They understand.
Yeah.
And then you go ahead, you say, hey, I'm moving on to this new role. And then they, hopefully will hire someone else into this position when I move on.
Totally. Well, I
Yeah.
realize it's early days, but how's it going so far? Tell me what kinds of things have you been doing so far?
Yeah, sure. So I have been doing a lot of different things, really focusing on a few main things. One is, what organizations can they have and build relationships with, right? And it's whether it's like a GC community focused on tech companies, or a GC community focused on IP, or the Women's General Counsel Network. Like, what are the other organizations that they can have touch points with? Second is really thinking deeply about what are the formats and fora for doing programs that are going to be effective, that either show Mayor Brown as a thought leader, to show Mayor Brown that they actually do understand technology companies, or to provide practical guidance to general counsel, especially in these days when we're doing so much more with less. So trying to help them understand how to really leverage that. And then finally, like I said, it's really helping them already understand, what do general counsel need? What are they looking for when they go to outside counsel? And what's going to keep a general counsel connected to a law firm and its attorneys as a general counsel moves from company to company. I myself have done that. And so that's the kind of relationship Mayor Brown wants to build with its general counsel.
Makes sense. So was this program, I realize you're now the second person, so was it pretty much already well developed, or are you actually kind of creating the job or creating the activities as you're going along and designing the best way to make use of your time?
Yes and no. So it was definitely fairly well thought of when I joined. But at the same time, I am helping them figure it out too, like what is the best way to approach things. And what's been really interesting is also because I'm asking so many questions about like, well, do we do this? And do we work on this area? And do we have this capability? They're also realizing like their amazing capabilities across the firm that maybe they didn't like maybe they didn't always know that they had this capability or they hadn't focused on it. So how do you merge it or combine it so that it's like one amazing capability you can present?
Yeah, interesting. Is it also giving you an insight into how law firms work? I mean, big law, is is that interesting also just to kind of see the other side? I mean, I'm sure you use lawyers that you said you work with Mayor Brown, but is it interesting to kind of see how it's done on the other side?
Yeah, it really is. And what I think is very so I was in private practice for about 6 or 7 years myself.
Hmm.
And it has definitely changed and not changed at the same time.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's changed in that there's so much more focus on being practical, cost effective, having good relationships with your clients, that is based on not only providing good legal advice, but on providing like a true partnership with your clients, being strategic with them, helping them think ahead, those types of things. And the way it's not changed is there's still billable hour requirements. You still have firm hierarchy. You still have, partners versus associates and all those different types of things. But it is what's been fun at Mayor Brown in particular is really getting to learn about their capabilities. Like I knew them from when I was in DC and as a really strong regulatory firm. I had always known that. And they are very big in Chicago, and I'm from Chicago, so I knew them
Mhm.
from my
Oh,
time just
really?
growing up there. But just to be able to ask ask one of the partners I work with closely, oh hey, do we do this kind of work? And the answer is always yes, of course. Here's the partner you want to talk to. That we do this kind of work and we do a lot of it. And that's been really great to see and learn too.
Now, is your focus, I mean, I know most of your work has been in the Bay Area. Is your focus to really help the Bay Area practice and connections and the things you're talking about? Or are you working with the firm globally, nationally? What's the geographic scope?
Yeah, it's definitely globally. So, an example is last week, I presented to a group of women founders, VC fund managers, and investors in general who are all from Italy.
Hmm.
And it was this amazing event up in Sonoma, and I presented on the firm and my capabilities. And I've also been involved in discussions with our our firm locations in Germany and Europe because there's a lot happening there in tech as well, especially in things like privacy, cybersecurity, and health tech for that matter.
Hmm. Is part of your job to travel to all the different Mayor Brown offices, or have you started that already?
My job is going to be traveling a little bit. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go to Europe. That would be really fun. But I am scheduled to go to LA in January, and then next stop will probably be the Salt Lake City office and Chicago eventually.
Got it. So what are your future plans? I mean, obviously, I assume you're not going to do this job forever,
Yeah.
but are you seeking another GC role, do you think, or will this entice you to go back to private practice, perhaps? What is your thinking?
No, I'm definitely seeking another GC role. And I appreciate this opportunity and it's been really fun.
Yeah.
But I like being in-house. I like collaborating with the team. I like really making direct impact
Yeah.
and being strategic and part of the business.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what really motivates me. And I'm definitely in the market for that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I've interviewed a lot of lawyers, and I definitely know that the ones who, law firm is not for everyone, and GCs, in-house is not for everyone, but the
Yeah.
ones that have had a career in-house definitely talk about things like impact and really being close with the business and things like that. So
Yeah.
I think for
Yeah.
that kind of personality, that is a really good fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And and it's been interesting as a fractional where, when you're in fractional GC, sometimes you're truly embedded in the business, and sometimes it's a little bit more of an outside counsel type relationship, depending upon what they're looking for. And when it's an outside counsel kind of relationship, I find myself having to stop from getting too business oriented and asking those deep business questions like, does this make sense from a business perspective? And because that's not my job in that situation. Whereas when you're truly in-house, you can provide that kind of advice and counsel.
Yeah, that's totally cool. Well, Neela, I really appreciate your taking this time and tell me about this unique position. When you do land that GC job, which I have no doubt you will, please come back and tell me about it.
I sure will. Thank you so much.
This is Richard Hsu and Neela Paykel.